What if the person you looked down on for smelling like work was the only one who'd ever been above you all along? The cafe buzzed with the sound of morning rush orders, steam hissing, laughter, rising and fading like waves behind the counter stood. Mia, her apron dusted with coffee grounds, her hair tied back, her hands moving fast and steady. She'd been working there for 2 years, paying her way through college and saving whatever little she could. She loved the smell of roasted beans. It reminded her of mornings with her mother before life got complicated. But to most people, she was invisible, just another waitress smiling through exhaustion. That changed when a group of suited men walked in, laughing too loudly for the small space. Their leader, a tall man with a perfect tie and a phone glued to his ear, snapped his fingers at her as if calling a dog. Coffee black. No sugar, and make it quick. Mia bit back her irritation and smiled. Yes, sir. He turned to his colleagues, grinning. You can always tell who doesn't belong here by the smell, she frowned. What smell, sir? He smirked. Coffee. Cheap soap and tired dreams. She froze. The others laughed softly, pretending not to, but she saw it in their eyes, the kind of laughter that cuts deep. She placed the cup in front of him quietly, her voice calm. You might want to drink it while it's hot, sir, before the taste of arrogance cools it. He looked up, startled at the quiet fire in her tone. The cafe fell silent for a second, his smirk fading just slightly before he recovered and said, You've got attitude for someone behind a counter. She replied softly. Maybe that's because I know the difference between serving coffee and serving ego for a moment. Their eyes locked, his full, half pride, hers of quiet defiance. Then she walked away, not realizing the man she'd just challenged was one of the most powerful investors in the city. The man watched her walk away, his smirk still on his face, but his chest carried something he couldn't name, annoyance mixed with a strange flicker of respect when his friends laughed. He joined in, though his voice sounded distant. She's got a mouth on her, he muttered. One of them chuckled. Careful. Leo, people like her bite harder than they bow. Leo shrugged, sipping his coffee. But the taste felt different, somehow bitterer than usual. After the meeting, he couldn't stop thinking about her, the girl who didn't flinch under his arrogance, the girl who spoke like she'd seen through his suit. The next morning he returned alone. He told himself it was because the coffee was decent, but when he walked in and saw her wiping tables with her sleeves rolled up and her hair slightly undone, something in him shifted. She looked up and frowned. You again, he smiled, this time softer. Maybe I came to apologize, she raised an eyebrow. Or maybe you came for a refill. He chuckled. Maybe both. He sat down, watching her work until she approached cautiously. He said, I was rude yesterday. She shrugged. People like you usually are. He blinked, surprised, then laughed. I deserved that, she smiled a little. You did. They started talking between orders and stolen moments, his charm slowly replaced by curiosity. She was sharp, funnier than he expected. She told him stories about her night classes and her dream of opening her own coffee chain one day. He listened, really listened for the first time in years. Her passion made him remember a time when he wasn't just chasing numbers before he left. That day he said quietly, I'll be back tomorrow. She smiled, half teasing. Don't make promises you won't keep. He replied, I'm not used to people telling me no. Maybe that's why I'm coming back. Days turned into weeks. He came often at first. She thought it was guilt, but soon she realized he enjoyed being around her. He laughed more, he stayed longer. He asked about her dreams and actually remembered them. He never mentioned his wealth, and she never asked until one afternoon his driver mistakenly walked in holding files. Mr. Leone, the board meeting has been moved. She froze. Mr. Leone, as in Leo Leone, the billionaire CEO of Leone Group. He looked at her silently, the truth between them, heavy as the sound of the espresso machine. She whispered, You're him. He nodded. I wanted you to see me before you saw my name. Mia stood frozen, the cup in her hand, trembling. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. You're Leo. Leone. The Leo. Leone. He sighed, looking at her face, searching for the same warmth she had before. I didn't mean to lie. I just wanted one person to treat me like a man, not a brand. She took a step back, anger rising in her chest. You mocked me for smelling like coffee while sitting in a cafe you own. He looked. Down guilt spreading across his face. "I didn't own this one," he said softly. "It's one of my father's old franchises. He was planning to shut it down." Her voice grew quiet. "So what was I then? Entertainment?" He shook his head quickly. "No, you were. The only person who talked to me like I wasn't untouchable." She stared at him, hurt flashing in her eyes. "I thought you understood me, but you were just curious." She turned to walk away, but he stopped her. "Wait. Please let me explain." She didn't look back. "You don't owe me an explanation, Mr. Leone," he said her name for the first time. "Mia, please just listen for a second. I was everything people wanted me to be until you called me arrogant. That's the first time anyone ever made me think maybe." She stopped for a moment but didn't turn around, her hands tightening on her apron, her voice low. "You can't fix insults with money, Leo. You fix them by meaning your apology." He stood there speechless as she walked back behind the counter. Refusing to look at him the next morning, he returned again, but she wasn't there. The manager said she had quit last night. He felt something twist in his chest, a hollow ache he hadn't known since childhood. He spent the day restless until he made a decision. 3 months later, the same cafe reopened under a new name, The Grind by Mia. The locals were shocked at the transformation. The air smelled richer, the space brighter, the walls filled with photos of workers and students smiling under the new logo on opening day. Mia stood behind the counter again, wearing a clean new apron, her hands shaking slightly as she looked at the crowd that had come through the door. Leo stood quietly at the back, waiting until the line thinned before. Walking up, she looked at him coldly. "You did this, didn't you?" He smiled softly. "I invested, but it's yours completely. Every penny. Every choice." She looked at him suspiciously. "Why would you do that?" he said quietly. "Because you reminded me who I was before success made me forget." Mia looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for the arrogance she once saw there, but it was gone, replaced by something raw and honest. She folded her arms. "I don't want your pity, Leo." He shook his head. "It's not pity, Mia, it's respect. You earned this. I just gave it a place to exist." She glanced around the cafe, people laughing, her name printed on the wall, her chest tightening. "I worked my whole life for this." He smiled. "I know that's why it's in your name, not mine." For a moment, neither spoke. He looked at her like a man who'd spent years chasing things that never filled him and finally found something real. She softened, but her voice stayed careful. "So what happens now?" He took a slow breath. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I'd like a chance to be someone worth forgiving." She looked down at the floor, then back at him. "You think a coffee shop fixes everything?" He smiled faintly. "No. But maybe it's a start." Over the next few weeks, he kept showing up quietly. No entourage, no suit, sometimes helping her carry supplies, sometimes just sitting in the corner with a cup of plain black coffee one evening as she cleaned the counter. He said softly, "You know what? I realized. You don't smell like coffee, you smell like purpose." She turned to him, laughing, shaking her head. "That's the cheesiest line I've ever heard." He grinned. "I wasn't trying to impress you, just telling the truth." As the months passed, their friendship grew. She learned that beneath the headlines, he was just a man learning how to live again. And he learned that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it smiles from behind a counter. One evening after closing time, they stood in the quiet cafe. Lights dimmed. He said, "You changed me, Mia." She looked at him, surprised. "Me?" He nodded. "Before you, I only built things that made me richer. You made me want to build something that made me better." She stepped closer, her eyes soft. "You already did." He smiled, his old arrogance replaced by gratitude. She looked at him and for the first time saw not the billionaire who mocked her, but the man who learned humility through her silence. He whispered, "Thank you for not hating me." She smiled gently. "Thank you for finally tasting what real life feels like." And when he leaned in, she didn't step back because she finally understood that forgiveness sometimes smells like the same thing. He once mocked coffee, warmth, and new beginnings. If this story made you smile, share it with someone who needs a reminder that accidents can turn into beautiful beginnings.